All right, hello, and welcome to SCO's August webinar titled Why SCO, a Student Panel. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy. My name is Avery Cunningham. I am a Student Services and Admissions Officer here at SCO. I'm one of the admissions team members who answers your questions and will be participating in the admissions process with you. Before we get started, I ask that we all use proper Zoom etiquette by keeping microphones muted unless speaking, limiting background noise, and respecting all of this webinar's attendees and facilitators. We will have time for questions towards the end of the webinar, but in the meantime, if you do have any questions or concerns that need immediate attention, please use your chat feature to communicate with us. Today, you'll be hearing from two members of our Student Ambassador Program, Amy Overland and Kaylee Standridge, who will be discussing their own personal experience discovering optometry and applying for optometry school, and why they ultimately chose SCO. These students will also give insight into the student life experience here at SCO, from the classroom to the Memphis experience overall. Please note, this webinar is being recorded and will be free and available to view starting tomorrow on our website. Alrighty, so to go ahead and get us up and started, Amy and Kaylee, would you mind introducing yourselves, where you're from, your alma mater, your major, and just giving us a brief introduction into who you are and what brought you here today?
Yeah, I can go first. Hi everyone. My name is Amy Overland. I'm a second year here at SCO. I'm from Honolulu, Hawaii, so a little bit far from Memphis, but I went to school at Purdue University, and that's in Indiana. And I majored in developmental and family science with a child development concentration. So ultimately, I was kind of I guess geared more towards SCO just because my interests lie more in like vision therapy and pediatrics, and that's kind of one of the key like groups of people that SCO does a really great job of serving.
Okay, hey everyone, I'm Kaylee Standridge. So I'm originally from Dardanelle, Arkansas, which is a little bit closer than Amy to Memphis, and I went to the University of Central Arkansas for my undergrad, and I majored in biology and also had a minor in business administration.
Wonderful, thank you. So we'll get started with some questions. So let's talk about your journey to optometry school, starting off with how you were exposed to optometry when you started researching optometry schools, and then we'll talk about how you went about gaining some shadowing and professional experience, and if you participated in any pre-optometry or pre-health clubs at your institutions, and how you ultimately feel those experiences helped you out. So whomever would like to start, just walking us through your optometric journey.
Okay, I can go first again. So I was actually really late to the ball at getting exposed to optometry. I went to undergrad thinking I wanted to be a teacher. So that's kind of where I started out as a freshman. And then it wasn't until like halfway through the first semester where I decided that wasn't for me. And I kind of started looking around for new things. My mom and I had actually watched, I don't know, I think it's called Outdaughtered. It's on TLC. It's just this family and they have 5 quintuplets and one of them needed to get eyeglasses. And so on the TV show, they like kind of showed that process of like her getting glasses and like undergoing surgery for her eyes. And that was honestly the first exposure I ever had to optometry, just like watching that show because I don't wear glasses. I never needed to see the optometrist. My peds doctor like waved me through. I was good to go, good eyesight. So I had never experienced any of that before. So after like talking to my mom, we had to like, she kind of helped me discover more about what I wanted to do with my future besides being a teacher. So I equate that show to being like my first exposure of the field in general. But then as I like started researching and like really considering optometry as a career, that's kind of when I got to learn more about exactly what they do besides giving you glasses, but also doing like the comprehensive, like checking the back of your eye, like the retina, and kind of helping with that connection between the eye and the brain. So I guess like sophomore year is kind of when I started my research of optometry schools. That was also when I started gaining shadowing experience. So because I had never been to an optometrist before, I ended up just reaching out to my mom's optometrist and asking if I could shadow her. And she was super helpful and agreed like pretty instantly. So I shadowed the 2 Christmas breaks that I was home, my sophomore year, junior year, or sophomore year, junior year, and then COVID hit. So that was kind of like the end of my shadowing experience. I didn't have any professional experience like working as a tech or anything. And I went to one pre-optometry meeting when I was at Purdue, and that was actually my first exposure to SCO and like the only exposure I had to any of the schools really. Because after that, that was when like COVID got really heavy. I had a lot of classes going on because I was trying to play catch up just with the prereqs, but also like keeping my major on track. So I really didn't participate in any pre-optometry or pre-health clubs. And I kind of regret it a little bit, but overall, I don't know if I would go back or change anything.
Okay, so like Amy, I also do not wear glasses. So I didn't have to like personally go to a doctor or anything other than my yearly annual checkup growing up. But my mom has always had glasses or contact lenses. And then a lot of people in my family have always worn glasses or contact lenses. So I was exposed to it through that and going with my mom every year. And she was actually the one that kind of suggested to me, like, maybe you should look into doing this, because I'd always wanted to do something medical, but when I was like applying to colleges and stuff, I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to major or like all of that. So she was like, why don't you like look into doing something like that? Like, I think you'd like it. So I actually called the optometrist that I saw growing up and was like, hey, do you care if I shadow you and everything? And ended up shadowing her and loving it through her. So I ended up shadowing and getting exposure to it fairly early on. I went into college knowing that that's what I wanted to do. So I started researching optometry schools probably my freshman year of college. I'd known about SCO just because it's about 4 hours from my hometown, but I started researching other ones freshman year of college, and then also ended up going on tours between my sophomore and junior year of college. So I started shadowing and researching fairly early on since I came in knowing exactly what I wanted to do. When I was in high school, I shadowed my optometrist that I saw all growing up and who treated my whole family. Coming from a small town, she was the only one really there. And then once I moved to Conway, Arkansas for my undergrad, I ended up just kind of doing some research on my own, finding a couple optometrists I was interested in shadowing, and then just ended up calling them. And a lot of them were really receptive to that. I ended up shadowing a couple of doctors throughout undergrad, and I really liked that experience because one of them was in private practice, another one was in like a group setting, so multiple doctors at the same practice, and it gave me a lot of exposure to the different avenues that you can really take as a clinician. I did participate in our pre-optometry club whenever I was an undergrad. However, my undergrad it's on the smaller side. It's not like a big SEC school or anything like that. So our pre-optometry club consisted of like 6-ish people. There wasn't a whole lot of people going into the field, but our advisor did a really good job of getting like optometry schools to come to our school and speak and stuff like that. So I did technically participate in our pre-optometry club. It just wasn't so much of a structured club. It was more of like our advisor kind of kept in touch with us and coordinated with us through that way.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about your application experience. When did you complete your application relative to the application deadline? And also maybe talk about your OAT experience, whether that be prep or test taking. And did you have any roadblocks or frustrations come up during the application process? And then finally, what was the SCO interview experience like for you both?
Amy, I can go first this time. So I ended up I had the chance to take a class the spring semester before I applied called Professional Skills. And if that's offered at any of y'all's undergrads, I highly recommend. So after taking that course, I already had my CV ready to go and had it reviewed and everything by the professors at our undergrad. And then I had already been shadowing throughout undergrad. So I'd already talked to the doctors I'd shadowed and got some letter of recommendations and some letters of recommendations from professors at my undergrad as well. So by the time the application process came around, I was kind of had everything ready to go. So I ended up applying, I believe it was on the day the application opened. It may have been the day after, but it was like super early on in the process just because I had already had the opportunity to have all of those things done and completed and reviewed from other people. My OAT prep was unique just because of COVID. I'm sure Amy can say the same. I originally was supposed to take my OAT like our spring break, so March, third week of March, around that time, and COVID had hit like the week before. So I'd started studying December and studied all 2 or 3 months, and then COVID hit and the testing center was pretty much like, we can't let you test. We also don't know when you can test yet. I mean, everyone was kind of in a limbo, didn't really know how to go forward. And so mine was definitely unique. I ended up being able to take it mid-June, I believe. And so I kind of took like a month off of prepping for the OAT just so I didn't burn out. And then once I was done with my spring courses, I picked it back up again throughout the summer. So ours was definitely different than most of the people, especially the incoming classes, just with COVID, because we were the class that COVID affected our application process. As far as frustrations or roadblocks, I would definitely just say having to navigate the new normal with COVID, as well as like, I mean, I'd never taken a test with a mask on and it was a 5-hour test. So that was definitely different. Just having to learn how to gauge everyone's new normal. I mean, that was probably the biggest frustration. And then again, our interview experience was definitely unique because ours was completely online. However, I had the chance to come and tour the school beforehand that a lot of people in our class didn't get the chance to do. So I'd already been exposed to campus and everything. But even though it was online, I honestly enjoyed it. We had 2 days. One was more of like a Q&A with Sunny or another admissions person. And then the next day was like our actual interview. I honestly really enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know any different because we had it all online, but I really enjoyed it personally. I thought it was simple and easy and made the nerves kind of die down a little bit.
Okay, so different from Kaylee, I didn't submit my application until September. So I think it opens in like July, I want to say, like mid-July or something like that. And I kind of waited a little bit, and I can get into like why I did that a little in like the next question. But it was mostly just like I was sitting on my, I forget that like paper you have to write. I forget what it's called exactly, but I was kind of sitting on that for a long time just because I was nervous. I was scared. I think applying to anything is very nerve-wracking, so that was kind of what happened to me. But then also, so when I was taking my OATs, for my OAT prep, I didn't really take a course or anything. I had all my notes from the classes I had taken that I knew that were going to be on the exam, so like biochem, or not biochem, excuse me, organic chemistry, physics, biology, those classes. I had those notes that I had saved, and then I had bought the Kaplan book, and I kind of self-studied. I didn't buy into any program or anything. And I feel like, I don't know if that's the best way to go about it, but I mean, it ended up working out for me, but it was definitely a lot of work. I had planned to take my OAT in, I think, the end of June, the summer before I submitted my application, or the summer of that, yeah, because the application was July. So I took it the month before. And I had an interesting experience because my computer, I was sitting in the test room, and my computer actually ended up skipping some of the sections for me for no reason, really. I don't know what happened. I was taking biology, hit next, skipped me all the way to the reading. I freaked out, like called the coordinator or whatever, whoever the proctor was, and like explained the situation. And because it's a programmed exam, they really can't do anything for you. So she really just told me to like go back to my computer and finish. So what was supposed to be a 5-hour exam for me the first time ended up being like a 2.5-hour exam. I ended up having to call my mom to get her to like come back earlier because she had just dropped me off. I was like crying because that is a horrible thing to happen, because all those sections that it had skipped for me had given me zeros because I hadn't answered any of those questions. So that was pretty traumatic. It ended up working out though, because obviously that was not my fault. I didn't skip those sections myself. So I ended up emailing the testing center, or I emailed somebody, told them, explained the situation, asked if like there was some way I could take the test again, because I think if you want to retake it, you have to wait like 3 months or something crazy like that. And I really just didn't want to, nor did I have the time to do that. So I emailed them, explained the situation, asked if I could get like an expedited retake. They ended up letting me retake it. I didn't have to pay. And the score that was submitted to all the schools when I submitted my application actually was the only score they got. So they never, SCO and all the other schools I applied to never saw that first score with all the zeros. It got completely wiped and replaced by the new score that I took for the new exam, which I ended up taking, I think, early August, because I was freaking out. I didn't want to have to go through that again. So I ended up pushing my OAT back the second time. So if that happens to you, just know that email them, explain the situation, and hopefully it works out just like it did for me. I think that's probably the biggest frustration or roadblock I had during my application process. Similar to Kaylee, I had already had like my resume looked at because I had to do it for a class. I had my letters of rec all lined up when thought I was going to be submitting my app earlier. I think another little frustration is just some schools only give you so many weeks to hear back, I guess. So like that's kind of anxiety inducing, just like trying to decide what's best for you. And then like Kaylee said, our SEO interview was online. It was like between 2 days. So you talked, I think I talked to Joe Hauser. So I had like talked to him for 20 minutes, and the next day I talked to my actual interviewer for like a couple hours. I think it was longer than it was supposed to be, just because we were having a really good time. And SEO was not my first interview. So I kind of thought I knew what I was getting into going into the SEO interview, but it was completely different from any other school, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was kind of a breath of fresh air, and it was way more conversation than just them like drilling you with questions or anything, which was kind of a nice surprise, and way more relaxing.
Wonderful, thank you. Alrighty, so now getting really into why you chose SEO. Starting off, what was it about SEO that made the greatest impact on you? And if you were on the fence, what ultimately made you choose SEO? And since you both were in a kind of unique situation with COVID-19, if you were able to visit the campus prior to applying or enrolling, what was that experience like for you?
I can go first, Kaylee. So for me, I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but I was really interested in, or I am very interested in, vision therapy. So that was a program that was really important to me when I was interviewing at all the schools. SCO, like I said, has a really great vision therapy program. A lot of the textbooks or the research that's being done on vision therapy is done by SCO doctors. So that was something that I had kept in the back of my mind for a really long time. I was not able to visit the campus prior to applying, but something that I thought was really great about SCO is once you were accepted, then they reached out to you and offered to host you at the school to give you, so that you could see it, and they would give you a tour, basically. So my mom and I were able to do that. So I was able to see the school before I ultimately decided to choose SCO. And I was on the fence. I was between this school, SCO, and then a school in California. And I think ultimately what made me decide to choose SEO was just the constant outreach that they had. Like I knew they knew who I was, even like during the application process. They kept wanting to answer my questions. They wanted to reassure me. And then another thing that I think was really important, especially for our year, was that what they were planning to do like in the following years with COVID. So a lot of the schools during our application process were kind of talking about what they were doing now and like how they were trying to keep their students in person, or like they had everything online, or and in every one of those interviews I all made a point to ask like, well, what is your plan for the future? Like if things don't open up, or if things do open up, or like what do you think you guys are going to do next year, because I would have been a part of that class. So I kind of wanted to get a feel for what I would be putting myself into. And something that SEO said was, or something that they were doing was that they had kept all their students in lab in person, which is huge because you want that hands-on experience. And that was something that they were pretty adamant about continuing to do. And if COVID was getting better, or it was going to get better, then they wanted to open up the campus as quickly, as safely, and as soon as possible. And that was something that I think ultimately sold me, just because it just felt like they were doing the most for their students in like such a difficult time.
Okay, so like I said earlier, I'm from Arkansas, which is not far at all. I originally I was like, if I have to go out of state, I might as well go far, like go somewhere new and all of that. So I had no intention of coming to SCO, but like in high school and the start of undergrad, I was like, I'm not gonna go to Memphis. I'm gonna go somewhere far and look at schools like that. And I ended up touring a couple, like I said, between my sophomore and junior year of college. So I did have the chance to tour campus prior to interviewing and everything. And I toured another school before SEO, and then I toured SEO sometime during that summer. And once I got here, it was like a whole different atmosphere compared to the school that I had originally toured. Everyone was so welcoming, so kind. All the staff would make a point to be like, hey, enjoy your tour. All of the students, every single student that I passed by were just like, hey, like, hope you have a great tour, welcome to campus, and so on. And so that really, really stuck with me as an applicant to make me feel so welcome. Because, I mean, coming to a new school can be really daunting, especially when you have to move so far away from home and everything. So that made a huge impact on me, and my parents as well. They were with me. And I remember whenever we were leaving this, like my tour, my dad was like, I mean, you can make that decision. Like, I want you to go wherever you want to go, but I would love if you went. Like, I would feel like I'd be happy if you went here. And so that, I mean, plus, I mean, SEO, the technology is awesome. All of the staff doctors are amazing. They really want to see you do well. And like just all the state of art appliance, or the technology and everything is awesome. But the thing that made the biggest impact on me was just how welcoming and supportive everyone at SEO was during my tour. And I can tell you, like, being a student, that does not change. It's just how SEO is, and it makes the process so much easier, even being a student, because you do have like a heavy workload. And so having people that will stand behind you and want to see you succeed was a huge decision factor for me. So like I said, I did have the chance to tour campus prior to applying and enrolling, which I'm super thankful for, because I got to see how campus was prior to COVID. And so whenever I was coming in, I knew exactly which school I really wanted to be a part of. And then, so I wasn't ever, once I toured, I was never on the fence. I knew that's exactly where I wanted to go. And SEO just really fit with like me as a person and as an applicant. I think that's the best advice. Find the school that fits you the best, where you can see yourself living for 4 years and where you think that you would get the most out of school, because during school, this is the best time to learn. You have so many resources at your hands from all your staff doctors with all of their experience and everything, and just like a lot of resources and networks at school. So definitely choose a school that you can see yourself fitting into and you can see yourself going to for 4 years.
Wonderful, thank you. So looking back, what are some of the biggest differences between your undergraduate and professional studies thus far? How was your transition into optometry school? Not just the academic side, but also just the becoming familiar with the campus, familiar with the city, learning how to live and go to professional school. And does the experience so far match, exceed, or fall short of your expectations?
I'll go first, Amy. The biggest differences I would say is just honestly the workload. Like right now we're in 7 classes and we have 5 labs every week, and that's a big adjustment coming from like 4 undergraduate classes, or 4 or 5, depending on the credits every semester, and like 2 or 3 labs. And it's like every single class has a lot of information you have to remember. I mean, you need every single class that you take. So I think the biggest difference between that is definitely the workload. For me anyways, a lot of things like surprised me, honestly, being similar. Like there's a lot of clubs at SEO that you can get involved with to be more involved with school. Just like we do have, I mean, it's a large class for optometry schools, but and it doesn't feel as big. So you're like with all your friends and you go to class with all your friends. A lot of it's very similar, but I would say that the biggest difference to me was the workload and having to adjust to that. As far as my transition into optometry school, academic wise, I didn't really know what to expect coming in. So I definitely came in with an open mind. But as far as like socially and getting to know Memphis, SEO is really good about having like different days where you all come together and you all do stuff. Like we have like our little fall fest and we have Halloween stuff. And there's a club here called Omega Delta, and they'll coordinate things where you all hang out outside of school and you can kind of you get to meet people through that and you see more of Memphis through that. SEO does a really good job about really getting you together to meet your classmates and everything. And I feel like that made a world of a difference transitioning to optometry school, because I came here not knowing a single soul in Memphis or at school. And so that really helped me meet people and make friends and make it easier to move from home out of state. As far as the experience, like I said, I kind of came in not really knowing what to expect. I tried to come in with an open mind. But honestly, I've loved it so far. It is difficult at times, just like undergrad was, I'm sure. I mean, biochem's not easy, neither is organic chem. But everyone here really wants to see you succeed and everyone's in it together. So as hard as it is, sometimes you do have that support system to fall back on.
So for me, there were a lot of differences between my undergrad and professional studies. Like I said, my major was developmental and family science. So it was a lot of more social science. And then, so my day-to-day schedule in undergrad was a lot of like the prerequisites that you had to take. I think I was taking like 2 or 3 every semester. And then I would have like 2 or 3 of my major classes. So I had a pretty hefty schedule every semester. I think I was taking like 18 to 21 credits until I graduated, just because like I said earlier, I was playing catch up with that, but also trying to graduate on time. So for me, when I got to SEO, I knew it was going to be hard. I kind of felt like I could handle it because I had taken so many credit hours in undergrad, but I really struggled with the amount of just like science because I had been so used to like half science, half like social science, like more of like theory and how people are growing up and that kind of situation. But almost all the classes your first year are solely science based with like a couple of like optometry specific ones. So I kind of had to like make that change in my brain pretty quick and pretty early on, just because I wasn't used to like such a heavy solely science load. I think that was probably the biggest difference. Like Kaylee said, we have a lot of great organizations that you can be a part of. So like that was kind of nice to like still get involved on campus. That was something I really enjoyed doing when I was at Purdue. It is a smaller school compared to my undergrad. So like that was kind of an adjustment. And that was also something that like I had to take into consideration when I was applying to SCO, just because there are some optometry schools that are part of larger universities. So that's just like something to think about. Like, what do you want out of that? I am ultimately very happy that I chose SCO and happy that I chose a school that is only optometry and doesn't have like any other graduate professions or undergrad, just because everything is for us. I don't have to share. I'm not fighting. There's not really any long lines for anything, which is really nice. So that was kind of an adjustment as well, just like being in a smaller school where like everyone kind of knows everyone. And that's not a bad thing either. Like we know, Kaylee and I probably know every single one of our classmates, which is really nice, but we're still meeting like the third years who are above us. Like there are still people we don't know, which is still nice when we get to meet new people. My transition, I kind of talked about that like 2 seconds ago, just like trying to get my brain more into science, solely science based, and like keeping on track with that. I think I want to say I came in with an open mind, but I think in the back of my mind, I always knew that it's going to be hard. And that's just kind of a fact of life going into a professional school. It's going to be hard. So I had that. Another thing that we do at SCO is the week-long midterms. So in undergrad, every class kind of has their own schedule. So you might have like a midterm on Monday, a midterm on Wednesday, next week have nothing. And then maybe for finals, that's when you have like a week of every single class has an exam. But for SCO, we do that 3 times every semester, just like a week, and then you're learning new stuff and then a week. So that was kind of a transition for me. I wasn't really used to that. I didn't really know what to expect when we had our first midterm. But I think like obviously as you go on through the semesters and you just learn how to study for them and how to prepare. And that's just a learning curve that I think everyone has. And then has the experience so far met? I think it's exceeded for me. Because I started so late in my research, like I'm still learning things about optometry that I had no idea about. And it's always exciting because like, oh man, like I get to do that too. Like that's so cool. Or like I had no idea that we did this. Or so that's like always super fun. And I feel like my peers, it's always nice to hear about their experiences. Like we have some classmates who have worked in a clinic as a tech before, and getting to hear about what they did, or some people took a couple years off before applying and get to hearing what they did, whether it was optometry specific, or maybe they were in a different job and changed their mind, or they were just out and about exploring the world or something. But getting to hear about that from like other people is super nice, just because a lot of us here at SCO are not from the Memphis/Tennessee area. So getting to meet new people from different areas. Since I'm from Hawaii, actually a bunch of my friends, Kaylee included, came to visit me this last summer. And it's always nice to be able to show like people your hometown and where you grew up. So I've really enjoyed like everything that's happened and being a part of the SCO community so far.
Great, thank you so much. And then finally, talking about your life as an SEO student. What do you enjoy most about your class, lab, or clinical activities, whether that be last year or this semester? What are you looking forward to later in the program? Maybe also talk about your study schedule, free time, if you have any, and how you manage it. Whether you're involved in any extracurricular activities besides being a student ambassador, and then finally, how would you describe your experience living in Memphis?
I can take this one. So what do I enjoy the most? This semester specifically, actually, so Kaylee and I are in the same lab. So I don't know if she's gonna bring this up, but she might. But we actually just had our first school screening yesterday, so we got to go into a little elementary school and work with, I think we had second graders, kindergartners, fourth graders. I mean, while that was a lot of work, it was so incredibly fun. Like, I'm so excited to do it again next week. I feel like for me, I went into that school screening yesterday and I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm qualified. I don't know if I really know what I'm doing here, but like pleasantly surprised that like I knew exactly what I was doing. I was very like after the first couple kids came through, you really know way more than you think you do, and that's always like a good thing. I also really enjoy like the theory lab. So that's basically where you learn how to use every piece of equipment in an exam lane. So that's always super fun because you get to, at least for me, I'm like learning the names, I'm learning how to use them, I'm learning like what they're used for specifically. So that's kind of fun because I just get to talk to my mom later that day and I'll be like, I'm learning how to use like a slit lamp, and she'll be like, I don't know what that is, and I'm like, it's the one with the super bright light you put your chin in, and she's like, oh yeah. So like that's kind of fun getting to like explain what's going on and then explain to my mom more in like simple terms, and she can share in that excitement with me. I'm most looking forward to actually being in the clinic. So at SCO, we don't get to really like, we're not clinic doctors, I guess. I put that in quotes, until third year. That's when you really start seeing like patients besides the school screenings and stuff. So that's going to be super excited. I'm really excited to work with all the staff doctors and kind of get like complete hands-on experience besides working on like my classmates and stuff. Um, Studying, it really varies. Obviously, during like midterm weeks or like 2 weeks up leading to midterm weeks, I'm studying way more than I would after a midterm week. I would say I'm studying 24 hours during midterm week, and I think that's pretty standard. I try to do an hour every day, just like to keep up with the material, because like Kaylee was saying, there is a lot of material and it's all important material that you need to remember because it's going to be your day-to-day life for the rest of your life. I am involved in extracurricular activities. I'm involved in the COVD club here on campus, and that's the vision therapy club. So we just get to talk to vision therapists, whether they're in the area, a part of the SEO community, or just someone that another member of the club knows from home. We do a lot of like talks and stuff and get to hear about their perspective on residency or just how they run their clinic, and that's really fun. I'm also part of the Omega Delta Club that Kaylee was talking about, when they put on really fun events for us, and that's where we get to meet upperclassmen. And now that we're second years, we get to meet some of the first years, hopefully. So I'm excited for that. How do I manage my free time? I have never lived in an apartment before. I lived on campus all 4 years in undergrad, so I have really enjoyed cooking. I don't work out. That's just not for me, and it's not because I don't have time. It's a personal choice. So I like to take study breaks and cook. I like to make dinner. I like to make lunch. I like to make the time to do that. So that's kind of how I spend my free time. I also really enjoy spending time with my roommate. She brought her Switch up, and so we'll sit in the living room and do that sometimes, or watching a movie. I do like to go out and do things, but typically I am a little tired and a little sloth. So I like to sit on the couch when I have free time and just kind of relax and take a deep breath. um, living in Memphis is very different than living in an undergrad, like college town. I am from Hawaii, so I live on an island, but I do live like on like I would call it a city still, but it's not a city like Memphis is a city. I feel like it's very easy to get around in Memphis, in like a car. I feel like things are pretty close by. Like I think it's the furthest I driven out of Memphis, like out of downtown, is probably like 20 minutes. And that's just because I like to go to Trader Joe's for my groceries and stuff. But that's completely unnecessary. You don't need to drive 20 minutes to get your groceries. But I like to make a day out of it, and I'll just like do some light shopping as well. But I've enjoyed living in Memphis. It's really nice to live. I live on the island, and a lot of our classmates live there, so it's really nice to be able to like walk over to other people's apartments and like hang out with them or study with them. And it's always nice to be surrounded by like people you know, and then you can carpool and stuff. So I've enjoyed living in Memphis. I really don't have any complaints about it so far. Things are going well.
Okay, so like Amy said, right now during our second year, we're doing school screenings, which are super fun. I also was nervous about it yesterday, but ended up getting there and it ended up being like super fun. All the little kids were so funny and they're just so interested in what you're doing. As well as a lot of the stuff that we're doing in our theory labs this semester, like BIO or fundoscopy, where you see the back of the eye, and more like disease driven, whereas first year is more like chair skills for opto stuff, which is all interesting. But I think this semester I'm most excited about doing more like disease oriented lab skills, because that's more so where my interests lie in optometry. Looking forward, definitely clinic. I mean, like Amy said, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to learning just more of the optometry oriented thing. A lot of our first year was like human anatomy, ocular anatomy, a lot of the anatomies, which I really enjoy learning about, but I'm really excited to move forward and learn more about like pathology and stuff like that. And then actually seeing patients in clinic. I think that's what I'm most looking forward to. And it'll be here before we know it. How much time do I typically, like Amy said, I try to do a couple hours every day. Some days I'm feeling burnout and I'll give myself the day off. Other days I'm feeling motivated and I'll study for 5 or 6. Closer to midterms week, it does pick up, especially the week before and during. It's pretty much constantly. But once that's over, you do get a little break, which is a really nice part of the midterm weeks, because you're all done with your classes. You get that weekend to really be able to relax and everything. And then you can slowly pick up the pace that next week. I am involved in extracurricular activities. Honestly, a lot of them. I'm in the student ambassador program with Amy, and then Omega Delta, private practice club, COVID, ocular disease, low vision. So I'm like, in an undergrad, I was in like 2 clubs, but the clubs here I've really enjoyed being a part of, because I came in not knowing really where my interests lied with optometry, like which area, like which field I wanted to go into within optometry. So with joining everything is really like kind of geared me in a direction of where I want to end up once I graduate. And the clubs here I've really enjoyed, because it's all optometry oriented. All of them you can get something out of. They all have doctors come in and speak and go through cases. And you can learn a lot about optometry through the clubs. And it's not a huge time commitment. They'll have like a meeting once a month for all of them for like an hour, and they usually feed you, which is a plus. But I've honestly really, really enjoyed the clubs here at SCO, and I like being a part of a lot of them, and if there's more, I might even join some more this semester. As far as free time, I always make sure I give myself at least an hour a day, every single day, just to do something that I like to do, like enjoy, whether that's watching TV, going on a walk, just hanging out with friends. I always make a point to make free time, because if I didn't do that for myself personally, I know that I would get really burnt out with school. And it's really nice to just kind of have a brain break, even if it's something as simple as, making dinner, going on a walk, watching a TV show with your roommate or whatever. But that's normally how I like to spend it, mainly with friends or just watching TV, or I go to Amy's and play Mario Kart with them. How would you describe your living experience? I have honestly been pleasantly surprised with Memphis. I know Memphis gets a bad rap, but I've loved living here. I am from a smaller town. My undergrad was in a bigger town. It's not even a city, but so moving to Memphis, it's really nice having so many things to do. I love, and there's a bunch of like hidden gems in Memphis. Once you move here, you'll start like learning about stuff to do in Memphis, and you'll meet some local people here, just like at the grocery store or whatever, and they love to tell you about it. I feel like everyone that lives in Memphis normally loves living in Memphis, and I've really, really enjoyed it. I also live on the island, so with most of, if not all of Amy and I's friends living here, it's so nice being like 2 minutes from your friends and we can go to the pool and stuff like that. But yeah, I've definitely really enjoyed living in Memphis so far. There's a lot more here than you'd think there is, and like just learning about all the little things to do here has been really fun.
Thank you all so much. And finally, is there anything that surprised you about optometry school, whether it be positive or negative, anything that you feel our listeners might benefit from hearing?
I'll go first, Amy. I was exposed to optometry really early on in my whole life, I guess. But I think just everything you can do with optometry. I still didn't know everything in optometry school. They really expose you to every different avenue that you can take. And as well as like everyone, like your staff doctors here are going to be your colleagues once you graduate, and they make a point to say that. So everyone here is really, really supportive and want to see you do well. They want to see you learn. It's not like a competitive, and in my undergrad at least, it was kind of competitive. Like everyone was like, I want to be the best. Because you're applying to a professional school. But something that really surprised me here is everyone is so encouraging and supportive, and everyone is genuinely going through it together, and it's not the competitive nature than it was for undergrad. I think that was definitely a pleasant surprise of optometry school, as well as all of the different things that you can be a part of, such as the clubs. I kind of assumed that it would just be just school and then going home, studying and everything. I didn't know that they would have clubs and like stuff to do outside of it. They really make it a point to make it fun as well. And I think that surprised me.
I think for me, I don't know why this was surprising, but it just was. But just like how much you learn, like in 1 year. So Kaylee and I are second years now, and you can look at like the curriculum. I think there's like, I forget what it's called, like handbook, the SEO handbook. It lays out for you like the classes you're gonna take throughout like all 4 years while you're at SEO, and like so you can visually see it. But like once you've gone through it, you kind of look back and you're like, oh my gosh, like I have learned every single chair skill. Like I know how to use the phoropter to its entirety. Um, in the first year, which I think is like so crazy, but we still have so much to learn, which is also just like kind of crazy too. Like we're so close to being able to complete a full comprehensive eye exam, and it's been like 3 semesters for us. I think we have like 2 more, which makes sense. But like that's just like so crazy how quickly you learn and how fast it goes. I think another thing that like surprised me was yeah, like they have all the optometry like specific clubs at SCO, but they still like really do encourage you to continue your interest like outside of optometry, which is really nice. Something that we have here that is probably one of my absolute favorite things that I feel like never really gets talked about is our Big Little program. So Kaylee and I both have bigs in the class above us, and then we've just gotten littles who are all first years. We're actually going to meet them tomorrow formally. Um, but just like having that resource and getting to talk to them and learn about what they're doing, maybe give some advice, get some advice. That is something that really surprised me. I have a really great relationship with my big, I think, which is why I have such a positive attitude about the program. Some people don't. That's just how it goes. It's just dependent on who you get. But we will typically get dinner together a couple times a semester and kind of just like share what's going on in our lives. But I have really enjoyed like that being a part of that program, and I really like that SEO has that program. And I didn't know that they had it, so that was something that surprised me also as well. But I think that's it. I don't have anything else to say.
Well, thank you both so much. So now we're going to give our guest students, our attendees, some time to ask questions. For our students attending, please feel free to use the chat feature or the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions, and then we'll be sure to share them with Amy and Kaylee. You can ask about their experience prepping for admission, their time once they were enrolled and matriculated in optometry school, any questions you may have about SEO or the optometry school experience. I know Amy and Kaylee would be happy to answer. So we're going to give some time to see if any questions come through. All right, I'm not seeing any questions right now, but I may ask Amy and Kaylee if you can think back to when you were applying to optometry school. What was a question that you wish you could have asked a current student to give you any kind of insight or preparedness for the optometry school application process?
I think for me, I feel like applying to a professional school versus like applying to an undergrad is very different. I don't know why I had this mentality, but in high school, I was very like content. I just knew that like there's so many undergrad universities and schools and colleges in the US. Like I'm bound to get into one of them. It really wasn't a nerve-wracking process for me. And looking back, I could not tell you why I thought like that. That was not like a good mentality at all. But that's just what I thought. But applying to a professional school is so incredibly nerve-wracking, and it is to an extent, but ultimately they're trying to get to know you just as much as you're trying to get to know them. So you definitely want to make sure you're going into every single one of those interviews that you're getting with questions about the school, because then not only are like you getting to know more about them, you're getting like those answers that you need in order to make an informed decision, but also like that is showing your interest to the school, and so it kind of is like a win-win on both avenues. I feel like that is not like something I wish I would have known, but like I wish I would have known that it was not as like crazy nerve-wracking as like you would think it is, just because you're applying to like a professional school. I feel like if you're getting an interview, you have a pretty good chance, but I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I wish I would have told myself like it was all gonna be okay. Like it's gonna be okay, Amy. Like just calm down. you're prepared. It's gonna be fine in the end. I think another thing I would have wanted to know is just like how many schools am I supposed to apply to? Like there's only 20 something in the country. Should I apply to like all of them? Should I like try to be choosy? I don't know what I would do if I were applying this year just because everything is in person now. So like you have to fly. But for me, when I was applying, it was all online. So I didn't have to spend the extra money to get there. So I was a little more liberal with the schools that I was applying to because I was so nervous. So I applied to probably more than I would apply to now. And that's just a financial decision that was made. But I think if times had been the same and I would have had to fly out, I would have wanted to know like what were some like determining factors for applying to a school? Like what were the parts of the school that were causing applicants or like people I knew to like cut them from like even applying, I guess, if that makes sense. If that's not making sense, like let me know. But I think that's a question I would have asked.
Alrighty, we did have about 5 questions come in from our participants. And we want to go, and I'll circle back to you, Kaylee, but I do want to get to these people just in case they have to sign off soon. But first question from Emily. I saw online that the crime rate of Memphis, Tennessee is high. Do you feel safe living here? And one or both of you, well, actually for the sake of expediency, maybe just one of you can answer this question and then we'll move on to the next one.
I can answer this one. So I have never felt unsafe. There are definitely bad parts of every city. I even lived by myself my first semester. So, I mean, it was just me. It wasn't like I came home to a roommate. It was just me in my apartment. But I've never felt unsafe while living in Memphis. Memphis does get a bad reputation for that, and that's one of the things that my parents were kind of hesitant. They were like, I don't know, but after we toured, they felt safe. And also, like at school, there's always security present. There's cross guards to cross you across the street. And as far as like going out in Memphis and stuff, there are areas to avoid, just like any other city. But I've never personally been, as long as you avoid those areas, I've never felt uncomfortable or unsafe or anything living in Memphis, and even living alone in Memphis.
Thank you so much. And then we have our next question. What resources are available for students, i.e. recorded lectures, PDFs, or class slides, anything like that? If one of you would like to answer.
Sorry, I can do it. Mine was muted. We have actually all of those things. We have recorded lectures. We have the professors do post like the PDFs of the slides. They'll also post PowerPoints of the slides. We also have class notes. So every semester, our class will vote on which of the classes that we're taking we want notes for. And then our classmates can then submit like examples of their notes. And then we can vote on which ones we like. And then once those notes have ultimately been decided on, we can pay for them. And that price it varies. It depends on how many credit hours the class is worth. So a heavily credited class is worth a little bit. You have to pay a little bit more, but those are your notes until the end of time, until you graduate from SCO. And that is something that I have taken full advantage of in the past.
Thank you. And then the next question, what makes SCO's curriculum unique, from Angelica?
I would say the amount of patient encounters that you have. SCO, you're exposed to patients really early on. Like our second semester, we're already starting observation in clinic, we're doing stool screenings, and then third year you start your clinic and you're starting to see your own patients for yourself. They'll rotate you through different areas such as like primary care, peds. I think peds is your fourth year, but different stuff like that, like vision therapy, they'll rotate you through that. And then we also have satellite clinics such as Mobile Eyes. We have Focal Point, which is more of like a boutique setting, and it's more like dry eye geared. And then we have the University Eye Care at the University of Memphis campus. So we go to that university and do eye exams for the students there. I think SCO just does a really good job of getting you exposed. Something unique about SCO is also we have the Hayes Center, which is our institutional advancement. So that's not technically a part of the curriculum, but that was a big thing for me. They'll review contracts once you are graduating, you're looking for jobs. They'll review contracts to make sure you're getting a fair pair for what you'll be signing on to at that practice. They'll help you find jobs in general. They do a lot of institutional advancement, like just helping you network, just stuff like that. And I think it is unique to SCO, and it's super helpful once you're coming out of school and you're kind of making the transition between optometry student versus optometrist. So I feel like that's really helpful, and just the patient encounters that you're exposed to while you're at SCO makes it really unique.
Thank you. And then we have our next question from Nathaniel. I'm scheduled to interview at SCO on the 9th of September. What general or specific advice do you have for me? For Nathaniel, I have not been able to visit SCO before.
I think in general, just go in ready to showcase yourself. Like I said before, the SCO interview is a lot more relaxed, I want to say, than other schools. They're really just trying to get to know you. Obviously, they have your resume. They know what you've done. They know your grades. They know what you're involved in. But just being able to showcase the passion that you have for optometry, and then also if you have any specific interests in optometry, any niches that you're interested in being a part of, definitely you want to talk about that as well. Yeah, and then also make sure you have questions that you need or want answered at the end of it. They definitely just want to make sure you're coming in and wanting to be an optometrist for all the right reasons. So just be able to showcase that.
All right, thank you. And this is the last question I see in the chat from Piper. Piper is from Arkansas, like Kaylee, and she's wondering if there are any Arkansas student organizations.
Yeah, there is. There's actually the Arkansas State Club in a lot of different states. I know Midwest, if you're from the Midwest, it's like a group club, but a lot of the southern states or states closer have their own specific clubs, which is really nice. Last spring, we had 5 or 6 doctors from Arkansas come to Memphis, and we all went to dinner, so you can make connections that way and really get to know doctors and start kind of filling out if you want to go back home. When you practice, you can kind of start making those connections and finding doctors back home that you could possibly work for. One of the big things that I learned from the spring dinner that I attended is all of the optometrists in Arkansas, and I'm sure this goes for the rest of the country, they all know each other. They all can help you make connections and really figure out where you want to go and help you and guide you, and they're really helpful as well. So yes, there is that club that you can be a part of. I'm a part of it too. And then they'll also send out emails whenever Arkansas State conventions are happening, so you can go to those and help out and meet doctors that way. I think this fall we have 2 different meetings with them, and they normally take you out somewhere and you eat dinner with them and just socialize. And it's really, really helpful, and because I want to go back home, but it's been really, really nice to meet doctors back home and potentially that I could be working for in the future.
All right, so that's all of the questions I see. I'll make another quick call out for questions, either in the chat or in the Q&A feature. Alrighty then. Well, if that's all for questions, thank you so much, Amy and Kaylee, for this incredible webinar. You have offered really great insights and experiences and advice and recommendations for prospective and potential students. Information that I'm sure many students are going to be able to benefit from for the many months that this webinar will be posted on our website. So for those who have attended, I hope that you have enjoyed this experience and it has been assistance for you as you start on an optometric journey. Our next webinar will be how to master the SCO admissions interview. It will be hosted by Joe Hauser, our VP of Student Services. The registration link will be live on our website within the week. If you haven't done so already, I invite you to request more information by signing up for our inquiry form. You'll receive a personal advisor and a personal brochure with information relevant to your goals and experiences. Thank you again to our student ambassadors for sharing their time, and a special thank you to all of the attendees who have joined us. We hope to see you all at the next webinar, but in the meantime, have a great rest of your week and take care.